So in an upcoming post, I think it's a week out or so, I talk about organizations and, what are organizations on the left that people should be aware of? What are organizations on the right? And I also tee up a conversation around radical center and what does it mean to kind of drive kind of forward together in the middle, if you will. My wife and I went to a session of a group called Principles First. And as I understand it, it started as a never Trump Republican convening, and then started bringing in more and more kind of moderate Dems. And the whole premise is kind of, country over party, if you will, and a reaffirmation of the need, right, and place of dialogue and conversation and starting with first principles of kind of what do we value, rule of law, respectful discussion and dialogue, these kind of things. And I was really fascinated by the group. The session we attended, they gave, first off, it started with everybody standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And I haven't done that in years. And it was very moving, actually, to be in a room of folks where you're basically affirming that commitment, kind of above party, if you will. And that was really interesting. And then they had a panel and then awards to a number of the attorneys who had resigned from their firms because in protest of the firm's capitulation to the administration. And that was a really interesting conversation to have with those folks, to hear them talk about, why they decided they needed to leave their firms and what all went into that. And so that's one example. I think in a different way, you look at, Ezra Klein and the abundance movement and the things that they're talking about. It's a variation, but it's kind of it's similar in theme, to try to get out of our own way, if you will, and focus more on the fundamentals of infrastructure and things that mean something to people's lives, whatever the ideological frame is that takes place in. I think that the thing that's interesting, I first came on that term radical center in reading a book that a woman named Marilyn Ferguson wrote and published in 1980 called The Aquarian Conspiracy. And it was, I read that book and I still remember, like, the whole framing is around kind of integration and wholeness and unity, as opposed to kind of parts, if you will. The difference between a lot of what I would call radical center conversations that are taking place today and some of the things that Ferguson was promoting is that most of the conversations today are kind of much more secular and political, and not, to Jay's point rather, dealing with this spiritual element. And I think that's a really important part of that shift, if you will, is it. I mean, sure, there's an element of this that's very, secular and very much driven on, how do we come together to do things that matter in community. And I think that it's facilitated by having a higher calling, purpose, sense of grounding and connectivity that we need to be advancing at the same time that we're dealing with some of these fundamentals. But again, I would say, if you get part of what makes me angry about the Dems fumbling the ball so badly is that we're the folks who are supposed to be talking about bread and butter economics and supposed to be talking about getting a broader piece of the pie for, a larger set of stakeholders. And the reason that I titled the series Antidote to Autocracy is I really believe that a lot of the things that we are pioneering and have pioneered in the impact investing arena offers some of the way forward for how we need to be addressing these very basic foundational concerns and issues that our kind of fellow citizens have, and that people, if you don't feel agency, if you don't feel that you have a vested interest in economics and, the business and all that kind of stuff, of course you're going to be, raging and angry and vote for people who tell you that you can blame somebody else for the situation. Don't blame the billionaires, that kind of thing. And so I think this is all part of that discussion and that process. And it's also part of my frustration with the fact that the impact investing community has been absent from this discussion, to my mind, and has been really fearful of stepping forward because of a whole host of issues that we could talk about.